how wealthy or white.
Yeah, by the way, they did this with gay people too, with the exact same terminology. Of changes that are happening. Let's get to the news. First and foremost, at the top of the docket, we're going to be talking about Hunter Schafer. Hunter Schafer is amazing. I love her. She is my queen. I have a standing invite, an open invite to Hunter Schafer to come on the broadcast anytime, any place. I will go to her if she needs it. I would love to have her on the broadcast. Obviously, she's amazing, and it's not because. And don't get like weird thoughts in your mind. It's not because she's insanely hot. Obviously, that is not a bad thing, but also because she literally got arrested for protesting Israel at 30 Rock. Anyway, that was awesome. That was very cool. She has not replied to my DMs. It's fine. I'm not hurt by it. You know, she's probably too busy fucking doing movies and also getting her feet scanned by Hideo Kojima. It's okay. It's okay. It's not the end of the world. It's fine. I'm not disappointed that she has not replied to my DMs. She's probably very busy and also, you know, working on stuff. But like I said, open invitation to Hunter Schafer whenever she wants, anytime, any place, to come on the HasanAbi broadcast. All right. That's. I'm washed. I'm fucking washed. I'm so washed, dude. Hunter in the Mugler Angel Elixir ad is a literal goddess. Yeah, she didn't see it, and I'm not hurt by it. I think it's normal. It's cool. I like that she has not replied to my DMs. I think it's okay. It's cool, actually. Anyway, let's continue. So, as we talked about before, the Trump administration did a bunch of insane things, and one of the first executive actions they took was to, for no real reason whatsoever, declare that there are only two genders, and also you have to, you know, forcibly have your gender be your gender assigned to you at birth. You know. And for that reason, of course, many trans people who had to go and get new passports in this new administration literally got the wrong sex on their passports. Hunter Schafer is a prominent and very famous example of that. Here she is talking about her experiences. Let's take a look.
Hello, internet. I don't really post much these days, but I had a bit of a harsh reality check today and felt like it's important to share with whoever is listening. So I'm sure most of us remember on, I think, the first day of Trump's presidency, he signed an executive order to declare only two genders recognized by the state, male and female, assigned at birth. And as a result of this, which I wrote down because I want to get it right,
for the record, if you're wondering, what's the point of all this? It's cruelty. Literally nothing else. It's such a hollow, such a shallow, pointlessly, unnecessarily cruel thing to do. And also, not only is it cruel, but it's also obviously unproductive. Okay? It's unproductive and chaotic because absolutely zero people look at Hunter Schafer and go, that's a man. Okay? No one does that. Because gender, at the end of the day, no matter how much Republicans or dumbasses online claim is directly associated with your sex, it's biology, it is a social construct. It is what you wear, it is how you present yourself, it is how you carry yourself. And of course, for that reason, we don't, do penis checks or pussy checks before we have normal interactions with other people in the real world. We just assume, okay, this person is a woman. Okay? Gender is performative. It is a performance. But this misunderstanding has caused many people to behave in ridiculous ways. And of course, passing is not the end all be all. For those of you who say, "Oh, well, it's you're just only talking about people who pass or whatever," it's just that it is a very good entry point into the conversation for many people. Okay, for the average transphobic person, it's a really solid entry point into the conversation. Okay, because it bricks their brain in the opposite direction. When you show them someone like Hunter Schafer, and then you're like, you have to call this person a man now. They go, what are you saying? Like, that doesn't make any sense. That is why I talk about it from this perspective. It's an entry point. It's not the end all be all before people, go crazy over it. Anyway, let's take a look.
The Bureau of Consular Affairs has frozen passport applications requesting a gender marker change or renewals or new applications with a gender marker differing from an applicant's gender assigned at birth. So my initial reaction to this, because our president, is a lot of talk, was like, I'll believe it when I see it. And today, I saw it on my new passport.
Like, this is such a fucking insane thing to do, okay? What absolute insanity. Hunter Schafer is from New Jersey, and she still hasn't been on the broadcast. We have touched the same soil, Hunter. Okay? What more? What more has to happen here? Okay? That's what it says on my passport too. Mine says New Jersey, USA as well. Okay? I'm just saying. That's what it says on mine as well. Hello? It's like we align a lot on many issues, and I think it would be great and very productive if you came on the broadcast. That's all I'm saying, okay? That's all this is. That's all I'm saying, okay? Lamau, did you just cover this as a way to publicly beg her to come on stream? No, that's just me making jokes, chatter. The reason why I'm talking about this is because I've already talked about this at the beginning when the executive order came in. But obviously, when a famous celebrity is experiencing, when a beloved famous celebrity is also experiencing the same issues that the average trans chatters in my community are experiencing, don't you think that it's really good to hyper focus on it so that, more people are aware of it? Anyway. Hunter, if you're watching, I mean, we actually are a very funny community. We make jokes all the time. This is not the normal vibes of the community, okay? The one chatter does not reflect the broader. It's a very fun community. We love jokes. Unless you hate jokes, in which case we fucking hate jokes. We've never joked ever before. We've never even thought about joking. But otherwise, very, very fun ha-has are to be had here. So anyway, let's continue.
Male. So now to specify, my gender markers were first changed in my teens when I first got my driver's license, and then passports following. All have been female since then. Hasn't really been a problem. However, last year when I was filming in Barcelona, our car got broken into and my bag got stolen, and inside of that was my passport, which was supposed to last me up until my 30s. So I got an emergency passport, which was very simple at the time. It's basically just a copy of my old passport, but temporary. and only supposed to be used within the year. So as soon as I got back to the States, I had to get this fixed and get it replaced with a real proper passport, which I went to.
I'm confused. While perverse enough, I thought the executive order simply said that there were two genders, not that someone who was once one sex and has become another cannot stay that gender. Yeah, of course. Look, anytime someone says anything about gender in the opposite direction as the wokes, they just mean like they want to shit on trans people. Okay? Just like when people talk about fairness in sports, they don't actually care about fairness in women's sports. Okay? They just don't want trans people to exist. And this is a permissible way to say, fuck trans people. That's it. I've tried to explain this to people over and over again. Some people might genuinely think this conversation is actually about fairness in sports. Like they might have actually been lost in the sauce. There are plenty of people like that. Okay, plenty of people think on the one hand, trans people are unfairly discriminated against, and secondly, they should be nowhere near any athletic endeavor. Okay, that is real. That's a real person. That is the average American person, the median position. Okay, having said that, the conversation was started specifically on the boundaries of finding new ways to say trans people should be eradicated from public existence. That's it. And that is precisely what's going on here as well. They'll say, oh, only two genders. Come on, that makes sense. And then they'll turn around and go, also, if you are a trans woman, you're going to have male on your passport. If you are a trans man, you're going to have female on your passport. Doesn't make sense. It's about trans women specifically. Trans men are still allowed in men's sports. Yeah, but it's also just simply trans women participating in sports is not about fairness in sports. Okay, that's just a way to traffic this issue in a way that is permissible and dare I say popular in broader public opinion. It's just about saying trans people are weird, gross, and immoral and shouldn't exist. That's it. That is the entire purpose of it. Yes. Obviously, people like Hunter break the brains of many average Americans due to the fact that not only do they pass, but also are insanely pretty. But beyond that, trans men also, in a similar vein, break Americans' brains. Like they can't comprehend it. They can't understand it. It's still, like I said, an entry point into the conversation for many people who are just like oblivious to how these things work. Okay. Anyway. But ultimately, all of the legislation or executive actions that push for this kind of thing are not actually done on the real boundaries that they're talking about. It's not about like making sure that everybody only has like one or two, making sure that everybody's either a male or a female. Like that's not it. It's just being transphobic and trying to legislate away trans people. That's all it is. Anyway, let's continue.
The Federal Passport Agency today in LA and did. I've had to do this one time before. No part of the process was different. I filled everything out just like I normally would. I put female, and when it was picked up today and I opened it up, they had changed the marker to male. And I'm not making this post to fearmonger or to create like drama or receive consolation. I don't need it, but I do think it's worth posting to sort of note the reality of the situation and that it is actually happening. And I was shocked. Because I don't know. I just didn't think it was actually going to happen. And like, I want to acknowledge my privilege, like not only as a like famous or like celebrity trans woman who is white and thin and
also Yes, she is trans. She's a trans woman. She's a very famous trans actress. For the record, like, I think the point here is like, at least from where I'm standing, like, if it happens to her, which of course it was going to happen to her, because she is trans at the end of the day, it can have, like, think about how much harder it is for the average trans person who also doesn't have the same finances that she has, or didn't have understanding parents early on that were obviously super woke and allowed her to take hormone blockers initially, like puberty blockers initially, or some trans people that don't want to completely pass. Like, there's a variety of different factors here at play. Okay. And it is infinitely harder for everybody else. That's why I think it's important for public figures like this to actively come out and speak on their experiences. What is her name? Has she been in anything big? Yes, Hunter Schafer I guess her most famous thing is Euphoria, right? I mean, she's been in a bunch of stuff since then.
Can adhere to like contemporary beauty standards, and I can participate in all of that. And I pass, and it still happened. I never had my birth certificate changed. So this has led me to believe that I think the agencies who are in charge of passports and this sort of thing are now required to cross-reference birth certificates, or I don't know exactly what or what changed as far as the processing goes, but
yes, they put an M on her passport. It's unnecessarily complicated. It makes things unnecessarily complicated. You know what I mean? It's just, there is literally no reason to do this. There are, like, whenever I think about any sort of government decision, the good is supposed to outweigh the bad, right? Yes, I believe Chelsea Manning is at the Luigi trial. I just take photos. The good is supposed to outweigh the bad. Like, that's how it's supposed to work, because any matter of rules and restrictions and regulations actually end up restricting to a certain degree people's freedoms, but it's appropriate and understandable when it is for the greater good. That is at the heart of how we legislate. That is at the heart of why we make certain decisions. And you're supposed to democratically vote on the government to make these kinds of decisions and yada, yada, yada. But this kind of action is not even remotely good. Like, what are the benefits? What are the benefits other than if you're a transphobic person, you're like, hell yeah, we're owning them. Hell yeah, we're dominating them. You know what I mean? I guess that's it. That's the only thing that comes out of it. Right? And there are many issues, many complications that arise when you make these kinds of decisions. Like, when she travels now, if she goes to any other country, she's at the mercy of the border guards there. Like, they might actually give her issues, right? Because of the sex marker on her passport. Everywhere that she has to use her passport, she is going to run into issues.
This is the first time, excuse me, this has happened to me since I changed my gender marker. We're coming up on a decade now or something. And I do believe it is a direct result of...
Personally, I've just never found gender, trans, queer discourse is interesting. Yeah, okay. I mean, that's fine. But there are plenty of people in here that do care about it. Also, you're talking about like colonialism and stuff. Here, I'll give you one example. Palestine skate game. Okay. Countries that were not victim to Western colonialism oftentimes have very different attitudes about gender, or countries that are removed from, or countries that are far away from Western influence, unironically have very different attitudes about gender and queerness in general. That in and of itself, I think, is should probably explain to you that like our current understanding of gender, like being a rigid binary, unironically is reinforced in perpetuity by Western colonialists. Let people live is my argument always. Okay. Like, if you want to think about it from the perspective of like colonial domination, yes, the rigid binary, the rigid binary that is enforced upon people is a remnant of old, antiquated Western supremacist colonial actions.
Administration our country is currently operating under. And I guess I'm just sort of scared of the way this stuff like slowly gets implemented.
I'm not even just talking about like indigenous people either. I'm talking straight up like, look at Thailand. Okay. Thailand is a great example. Look at Iran. Okay. And there are plenty of issues in terms of sexuality in Iran and even in terms of gender in Iran as well. But like every country has their own set of problems. But ultimately, their existence, the concept of even like third gender, for example, in places like India, okay, I think should help you realize that gender as an expression is very different elsewhere. It's been different throughout time, and that our modern attitudes have nothing to do with the reality, or nothing to do with biology in general. As an AFAB MB therapist that works with only trans clients, there's so much I can say, but one thing I feel is extra important is to mention that transphobia harms everyone. Exactly. That is something that I stress regularly. A prime example being that a female athlete from the Olympics was harassed, sorry I'm blanking on her name, for many reasons we should all care about this. Exactly. Transphobia, trans people are a tiny sliver of the population. Oftentimes it's considered to be like the fanciful Western luxury that is created of trans people, right? Like people look at it and go, oh, this is just like white Western queers. Like they're rich, they're labor aristocrats, they're living in the heart of empire, they got no issues, so they're just like trying to bring up new issues. Like that is the broadest way that people look at trans people in a negative fashion. Okay? And what's interesting about it is that, one, that's not the case for cultures throughout time and even cultures that exist right now. So obviously it's unironically transphobia in and of itself, and the restrictions upon expressions of gender and expressions of sexuality that are old relics of Western empire for the most part. But beyond that, considering that trans people are a tiny margin of the population overall, consistently hyper-focusing on them and trying to dominate them in this way unironically ends up harming cis people, because there's just simply a lot more cis people than there are trans people. And because gender in and of itself is simply an expression, and that no one really fits the rigid binaries that people claim it exists out there, then cis women that are athletic get owned in the marketplace of ideas. People just assume that they're trans. Look at all the TERFs in England. None of them pass. They're all cis women. Not a single one of them passes. Much to consider here. Yeah. And it's interesting because I think TERFs, especially TERFs that are that don't fit this rigid standard that they claim exists out there, and that it's like completely biological, assume that if there was a full-blown eradication of transness, that like people would never suspect them of being trans potentially, but they don't realize that like it has nothing to do with someone's actual gender expression and everything to do with like dominating people. This is why I always say it's not being trans that is a mental illness. It is transphobia that is a mental illness, because the starting point is inherently mistaking something that is a social construct with biology, and then, you know, leading down this like very weird path where, because gender is so closely associated with your identity, you end up seeing trans people in the shadows, basically. That's where you arrive at transvestigation, which is the highest state of transphobia. And transvestigations, the concept of suspecting any and every person of being trans, potentially, makes you an insane person. There are transvestigators out there who literally think their own parents, they suspect their own parents of potentially being trans. They inevitably suspect themselves as being trans, potentially. Okay? It's a hyperfixation, and it leads you further and further astray. It leads you down this this mental illness pipeline. You know? So I always say, let it go. Let people exist. You know? Give them room to breathe. If it doesn't harm you, why do you care? What is your problem?
You know, because things just sort of like start happening. I think as we've seen in like historical rises of fascism and this sort of, everything that this new administration.
Please address the fact that this entire argument is based on the difference between sex and gender, and the passport says sex on it. Are we going to ignore that? This could be solved by adding a line to the document to differentiate between the two. Yeah. It doesn't matter, because everybody understands that what is on the passport is just simply gender. Okay? This is not like a semantics argument that these guys had a oopsie on. Okay? They're very clearly, very deliberately and very deliberately putting that there and changing it by force. Okay? And also, even sex is not a binary. So what do you do then? Like, even the biological aspect of sex is not a fucking binary. They used to say that only two genders, man and woman, sex. And then they had to learn more about, they've had to forcibly change the conversation. Ben Shapiro went from calling sex binary. Ben Shapiro first said it's gender is binary. Then, of course, they had to change the conversation a little bit to say, oh, no, that's just sex. Sex is biology. Gender is something different, but it doesn't matter. Sex is associated closely with your gender. Then they had to also say, okay, maybe sex itself, considering intersex people, considering all this other stuff, is also not a binary either. Okay? So now they say it's, what is it? Bimodal? Like there's two planks that you are either close to or not. Give it 10 more years. They'll be talking about abolishing gender at this point. You know what I mean? Because you just can't deny it. You can't deny the reality. It's just the cat's out of the bag. You know what I mean? Cat's out of the fucking bag. You just can't do anything about it. There's no way to just like, unless you do forcible suppression, which is what the administration wants to spend its limited resources on, seemingly. You're not going to be able to get away from this reality. You know, people are trans. They've always been trans, and they're going to continue being fucking trans. That's it. Just like people are gay, and they're always going to be gay. There are excellent courses on gender out there, and I believe the MB folks have real pain and real experience. I just think eventually we're going to be like, oh no, we went all in on this and failed to center acute forms of socioeconomic pain. No, I rarely ever talk about trans issues specifically from the perspective of identity. And I always maintain the position that, like, when you're doing advocacy or when you're writing policy, when you're trying to win elections, I don't center trans people and defending trans people as the main point of contention because I'm not a fucking Democrat. I'm not a fucking liberal. I often will remind people that all of these things that are being done for the sake of pure cruelty and nothing else is being done as a simple distraction, because any kind of cruel action that the administration engages in against trans people like this is a moment that they could be fixing your healthcare, is a moment that they could be fixing the potholes, but they choose not to do that sort of stuff because that would require actually governing for the population and not just simply using the government as a way to distribute more wealth and resources back to the most powerful people on this fucking planet. Okay? And that trans people do not exist in a magical space outside of the regular economic pressures that everyone else experiences. Trans people are working in the workforce alongside all of you. Trans people also have to pay rent. Trans people also have the same exact issues, relationship issues, monetary problems. They experience all of this alongside you. But then on top of that, they also have this additional problem that they have to deal with. Which is why I often say, it's none of your damn business, and why do you care? How does this harm you in any way? And that is precisely the reason why Republicans try to find an answer for that desperately. And the only answer they can come up with ultimately is, oh, well, they're all pedophiles, or they're all transing the children. It's a falsehood. It's ridiculous. It's a harmful lie that they present over and over again. But they do that for basically everything. Everything has to be built around a complete fucking lie. You know?
Kind of represents, there's a lot of talk, and then things start happening, and we start to normalize the circumstances we're under. And I just feel like it's important to share that it's not just talk, that this is real, and it's happening, and no one agencies, no matter their circumstance, no matter how wealthy or white.
Yeah, by the way, they did this with gay people too, with the exact same terminology, with the exact same attacks. But because of legislation, well, one, because of activism, and because of people constantly pushing and pushing and pushing, trans people included, once it became impossible to avoid the elephant in the room that gay people do exist, okay, and the American legislative body changed, okay, then it was over. It was done. Okay? It was done. It was over. So, Republicans looked for a new target. They couldn't just as easily shit on gay people now, even though they still try, make no mistake, okay? They still try, but overall, most people are just like, yeah, I don't care about this. I still believe in my heart that the same will happen for trans people inevitably, okay? But there will always be these kinds of regressive hiccups along the way. But no matter how hard you try, you cannot suppress the truth. Okay? That's it. Whether it be heliocentrism or the existence of trans people, you just can't suppress the truth. You can try. You can do as much harm as you possibly can. Okay? But the cat's out of the bag. You know? Orb mentioned, exactly. Heliocentrism was never actually suppressed. This is a myth. It says Age of Mythology. Let me push for a myth, okay?
Or pretty or whatever is excluded. This is real. I also want to say, I don't give a fuck that they put an M on my passport. It doesn't change really anything about me or my transness. However, it does make life a little harder. Personally, I haven't tested it out yet. I'll find out next week when I have to travel abroad for the first time with my new passport. But I'm pretty sure it's gonna come along with having to out myself to like Border Patrol agents and that whole gig much more often than I would like to or is really necessary. And this is just my personal circumstance. And thinking about other trans women who this might also be happening to, or other trans people, you know, the list only gets longer as far as the intricacies that come along with the difficulty that this brings into like real life.
Wait, what? So where was she before? Why didn't she say anything during the election? She's never been an activist. She enjoyed her religious life and never said a word during the election. Now she's surprised by everything. Before the election, Hunter Schafer literally got arrested. What have you done? She got arrested at an anti-Israel protest. What have you done? You know? That's crazy. Like, what do you want her to do? Firebomb the Capitol? Like, what are you talking about? That's crazy. This, in and of itself, despite her rich status, is already putting her in harm's way further. Like, once again, she's outing herself. She's putting herself in a heated political battle that revolves around her identity. Like, what do you mean? What are you talking about? This right here is already the action.
Life shit. This is getting very long, but I just want to say trans people are beautiful. We are never going to stop existing. I'm never going to stop being trans.
Yeah, but being quiet and unaware about trans issues in a trans woman still doesn't make sense. She's cool. Why do you think she's quiet and unaware about trans issues? So it's cool she got arrested for protesting genocide, but this is a weird blind spot. What are you talking about? Why is this the assumption that she is quiet and oblivious to trans issues? What is happening? I can't tell if this is like other trans people getting mad at Hunter Schafer, or if it's just like random woke cis people that are like, she didn't do enough. She didn't vote for Kamala, so now she deserves it. I'm going to misgender her now. Like, what is happening? Galaxy ending woke of the day. Liberals are so crazy. They'd be putting trans people in concentration camps, and on the way, liberals would be like, well, you deserve it because you didn't vote for Kamala Harris. Like, what the hell? Y'all are crazy, man. Trans people being held to a higher standard of activism than chatters hold themselves. Yeah.
A letter and a passport can't change that, and fuck this administration. And I don't really have an answer on what to do about this, but I feel it was important to share. This is real.
What are they talking about? She helped with the anti-trans bathroom bill in North Carolina turned over. That was back in 2007 too. She's been an advocate. Yeah. But also back then, she did it selfishly. You understand that there's always something you can say. There's always something you can say, oh, it wasn't enough. Or of course she's going to push for that because it was popular, even if it wasn't, right? You know what I mean? It doesn't matter. None of it matters. At a certain point, you have to understand that people are just talking shit because they want to talk shit. Okay? They are just trying to moralize it. They're just trying to add something else to the conversation so they can talk shit from a morally righteous position.